Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, and it is NBA season 25-26, and it is shaping up to be one of the more interesting seasons in recent memory. Plenty of movement in the off-season, plenty of injuries that are likely to determine the outcome of the year before a ball has even been thrown in the air, before a shot has even been taken, and some real mix and match amongst both conferences. It's pretty well conceded that the Western Conference is going to be the stronger of the conferences. The East, although weaker, seems to be a lot more open with some key injuries as well. There's a lot of projected movement that's going to happen in the season. There's been some interesting contract calls towards the end of the off-season that are really going to have a shape towards the end of the year and certainly next season. But there's still a lot of basketball to be played until then. So we'll get our 30-team preview in for the year, and we'll see exactly how it unfolds. This is my NBA season preview for the 2025-26 NBA year. We'll start in the East as we normally do, and we'll go in alphabetical order. So we will start with the Atlanta Hawks, who have made some really nice moves in the off-season. Some questionable players that haven't been re-signed yet, but nonetheless some really good moves in the off-season that are going to make them a really nice competitor in a conference that isn't going to necessarily be as strong as they were last year. When you look at their finalised roster, key notable players include Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Luke Kennard, Onyeka Okongwu, Kristaps Porzingis, Zachariah Risache, Jacob Toppin, Keaton Wallace, and Trae Young, of course, the leader of this group. When you look at that roster, when you look at the dynamic defense that was brought into this team, with still having the ability to put points on the board in an Eastern Conference that's a little bit weaker, I would suggest that Atlanta are going to be conference semi-finalists. So I'm expecting a top 4 finish, or at least a power ranking of them top 4 in the East to start the season. But they're going to need to take advantage of that damaged East. And when you really look at it, you have to consider that if they don't, with the way the conference is panning out, is this Trae's last chance as the number one man there in Atlanta? Of course, he had that unlikely run to the conference finals in 2021, where they were taken down by the eventual champion Milwaukee Bucks. But ever since then, it's been, a mix and match combination of players with Trae trying to get things done and mix it up. It hasn't been able to work, and there's certainly been some positives that are around him. There's no doubt about it. He had Dejounte Murray. He now has Dyson Daniels. Jalen Johnson's proven to be a really true piece, and I like defensively what they've done here, adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kristaps Porzingis if he's able to stay healthy. But you do have to wonder, if this doesn't happen, what is Atlanta's next move? Who is the next star that they get? Who is the next player that's going to fill that void again? I feel with the way that this conference is shaping out that they very well can be a semi-final team. But if they are stuck around that 9th, 10th seed, or struggling to make the 8th seed, you'd have to suggest that Trae Young is possibly going to be on the trade table, and that Atlanta are probably going to want to look to build something a little more sustainable. It'll be very interesting to see how it pans out, but that's how I'm feeling Atlanta to start the year. Moving over to the next team, and it is the NBA champions of 2024, the Boston Celtics. Now, Boston with a very much a different looking lineup. They will notably be without one of their all-time great franchise players. People don't like saying it, but he is. He's one of their all-time great franchise players. Jason Tatum will be out for, you would expect, most of the year with that Achilles injury. But they've also got to factor in that Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis are no longer on this team. Really crucial omissions from this Boston team. But nonetheless, they still have some key players within this roster, and they have a lot more than I'm going to name. Same with Atlanta, but these are the guys who I think are going to be the crucial rotations. Your Chris Boucher's, obviously your Jaylen Brown, your Luke Garza. I'd expect Ron Harper Jr. and Sam Hauser to be involved still. Peyton Pritchard, the reigning sixth man of the year. You have Anthony Simons, who's made his way over from Portland. Xavier Tillman, Jordan Walsh, and I would expect Derek White to still be contributing on this team as well. Now, despite the fact that they are going to be severely hampered without some particular players on their team, I still think we're looking at a playoff team. It's a matter of them making the most of those moves. What can you get out of Boucher as a defender? Boston's been known to get what they can out of big guys who can play defense. What are we going to see out of someone like a Ron Harper Jr.? What are we going to see out of a Peyton Pritchard, who's likely going to have to step up a little bit more? What are we going to see out of someone like an Anthony Simons as well, who's finally going to get some big minutes on a big media stage? He's been playing quite well in Portland for a couple of years, but now he's going to be in a big media market. The two big questions for me around Boston's success is, number one, Jaylen Brown, is he an All-NBA player by himself and a standout? This is when we're going to really have a lot of people start realising, has Jaylen Brown always been this good? For me, of course he's always been that good, but now that he's clearly the man on this team, with no question around Tatum's presence, that's going to be a little more well known. On the other side of it, does Jason Tatum actually come back this year and get some games under his belt? Rumour has it that he's been really, really good with his rehab and the injuries healing nicely. Of course you want a player of that capability back in your squad, but on the other side of it, you need to factor in that another serious injury to a player of his caliber certainly does hamper his future, not only as a player, but certainly for the Boston Celtics themselves. So we'll see how they go. Again, I think they're going to be a playoff team. Don't know how deep they go. Can certainly see them making the first round. But again, we're looking at this without a ball being thrown in the air for the season yet. Brooklyn Nets are the next cab off the rank, and there are not a lot of upsides here for the Brooklyn Nets, who many are probably going to suspect aren't going to win many games. It's probably not as bad as I first thought, but then the more I look at it, the worse it seems to get, particularly when you look at what they've given up and what they really haven't had in return. When you look at the ultimate depth of this lineup, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Let's have a look. 7 players, 8 players, 9, 10 players with 3 years or less experience. Your most experienced player at the moment currently running around with 6 years as a pro. There's a couple of those guys there, but we're not talking about anything too spectacular. Honestly, I'm going to go line by line here for Brooklyn, but Zaya Williams, Haywood Highsmith, Terrence Mann, Michael Porter Jr., Cam Thomas, Nick Claxton. That's pretty much the key senior players on that Brooklyn team, and as you can tell, none of them are a star. They're going to be a bottom 5 team once again. Moral victories are going to be crucial, where they can just get some development and stepping up amongst everyone there. But when you want to look, and yeah, you can talk about rookies, you can talk about Danny Wolf, you can talk about Drake Powell, you can talk about Igor Demine, you can talk about players such as Ben Seraf and Nolan Traore, but at the end of the day, these rookies only generally get better when they've got a lot of good experience around them, and guys that have been in the league, so I really don't see it being too impactful. Again, moral victories are going to be crucial. If you can get some development, you can get some highlights and get the occasional win. If you're Brooklyn, that's fine, but I wouldn't want to be a contending team that loses to this team itself. I mentioned their big numbers on a bad team. Cam Thomas is probably going to take 30 to 35 shots a night. That's not an outrageous statement, considering the way Cam Thomas can really put up shots. And the ultimate question is, will they win 15 games? I don't know. But for a Brooklyn team who 3 years ago had a lot of assets, traded them away, essentially don't have any draft capital, and now they have guys that are really going to struggle, it's going to be really interesting. Brooklyn's turned into a farm-feeding team, which is something that we've expected out of Orlando and Houston over the last few seasons until their recent revival. So don't expect much out of Brooklyn. As I said, you're going to see big numbers on a bad team and a team that's going to struggle to win 15 games. the next cab off the rank will be the Charlotte Hornets, who, again, I don't think have done anything significant, even in a weaker East. I would still be expecting them to be a bottom 5 team, and I think you're going to be looking at a top 10 players of the night kind of lineup. Can they maintain health? Can LaMelo Ball live up to the hype? They're going to be the ultimate questions, because when they're healthy, yeah, they're a really fun team to watch. When they're not healthy, they play the poorest brand of basketball that you can possibly think of. And don't get me wrong, they've got some players that can actually do a little bit and are expected to do a little bit, but not to the point where you get overly excited at the thought of watching a Charlotte Hornets game. We have Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball, Grant Williams, Colin Sexton, Kneppel, Josh Green, Pat Connaughton, Mason Plumlee, Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, and that is pretty much it, coached by Lee Charles. There are some upsides there when you want to look at it. I don't mind that Brandon Miller is still floating around and still trying to do his thing. Colin Sexton can be a productive guard. Seeing what Knuppel can do as a rookie, and obviously someone like a LaMelo Ball can produce when he needs to. But you've just got to get that consistency into the team because, as I said, you've got guys that can be really out there, that can really play. On the other side of that, they just get, taken away from things, whether they're not healthy, whether they're not focused, whether they're poor defensively. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly what Charlotte can do. As I said, for LaMelo, it's a matter of living up to the hype because people don't want to talk about it, but he's as overrated as Zion Williamson right now. We're talking about a guy who doesn't get on the floor, who puts up numbers, who campaigns for his own sanity and for his own hype machine, but he doesn't produce anything, and now he's been paid. So it's going to be even worse. And he's doing it on a team that hasn't had any success. Got to make your franchise relevant, and he's certainly not doing that by any stretch of the imagination. He can ball, he can play, ball by name, ball by nature, but you've got to produce results, and it's starting to get to that point now with LaMelo Ball where he does need to start producing results. Got to remember, he beat Anthony Edwards to Rookie of the Year, and I don't think anyone would even think about making a comparison between those two guys and the levels that they've reached in this league. So there's a lot of work to do. There's still time to do it, but when you look at this roster and when you look at the body of work so far, there's nothing that gives credence to suggest that it's going to happen this year again. I think Charlotte are a bottom 5 team, and I think to see them in the top 10 players of the night will be the best result that they can get throughout the year. To the Chicago Bulls, who, after some tense negotiations, managed to actually sign a deal for Josh Giddey, who was bordering on a triple-double for the closing part of last season. So he's been able to finally sign on to an extended period with the team for a little bit of stability, but I still don't see them being more than a playing team even in this Eastern Conference. And the key now is going to be managing the egos of their young stars, who certainly feel they've got a right of entitlement now to start being paid and to really start trying to make amends and really try and make something out of this league. And when you look all the way across the list, it's impressive in parts, but it sort of leaves a lot to be desired in others. Kobe White, he's going to want some sort of payment at some stage, particularly if you've paid Josh Giddey. You've got Javon Carter, you've got Trenton Flowers, you've got Vucevic, you've got Dosunmu, you've got Collins, you've got Herder, you have Jalen Smith, you have Trey Jones, you have Okoro, you have all Patrick Williams. And that is going to be the depth of your rotation, realistically, coached still by Billy Donovan. But there's not much there like I see in Chicago outside of you probably want Kobe White and Josh Giddey really trying to fight to make an all-star team. It's just not an appealing team. I don't like the looks of it. It's so-so. Again, is Josh Giddey an all-star level player this year? That becomes a real question. If he'd have had his level of play that he had last season, or towards the end of last season for a full year, yeah, we're probably looking at a guy that would have been a full-fledged all-star. On the other side of it, for Kobe White, he wants to get paid, and Chicago don't pay players. So, at the end of the day, is he going to re-sign? Because if Kobe White doesn't re-sign, you've already gave cash to Josh Giddey. Someone like a Vucevic, who's really a veteran of the team, he's old and needs to somehow still fit into the way this is going to be played because he's got to be their lead centre. all of a sudden you become a very, very distant basketball team from the play-in, let alone from truly contending to get into the playoffs. I mean, the Bulls with any wrong move will certainly see themselves move into a bottom 5 level roster in the East. And don't get me wrong, it is a weaker East. There might be some surprises coming through. But if anyone looks at this Bulls roster, if anyone looks at the way they play and the way other teams and certainly better individuals play, I don't think anyone's really sold on the idea that Chicago as a franchise and certainly as a team is going to be good this year. As I said, I think they're a playing team. They might surprise me. I doubt it. But I just don't see the Bulls being anything more than a real mid-range team trying to manage the egos of young stars who are trying to get paid. Moving over to the former number 1 seed in the East last season, the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I honestly think when you factor in how they are as a team, they were still 64 wins last year. They're playing in a conference that's a lot weaker. They're a team that doesn't appear to have lost out, let alone a team that hasn't got, underlying issues. They appear to have got slightly stronger. I think you're looking at an Eastern Conference Finals team. And let's go through their list of players who will really complement exactly what's going on their roster there. You've got Max Strus, Lonzo Ball, Thomas Bryant, Evan Mobley, Sam Merrill, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, Larry Nance, Jarrett Allen, Dean Wade, and of course Donovan Mitchell, a few fringe players as well that could see minutes depending on the situation. But if you look at a roster like that, that is a very deep rotation in a very weak, well, it's not a very weak, but certainly a weakened conference by comparison. It's going to be open slather, and a team like that with plenty of depth and options could really take advantage of that open slather. Be interesting to see exactly what happens. Ultimately, how healthy can they remain is going to be the question, because health in the playoffs is what really hurt them last year. If they can maintain that, you're looking at, for me last year, 2 of the 10 best players in the league were Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. I have no issues saying that. I'm quite happy to say that. But the other side of that is you can't be competitive if one of those 2 guys goes out and the other guy doesn't step up, or they both go out and you don't have anyone to really replace them. That happens with a lot of teams. It's what's happening with the Apron, where you can have 1 or 2 really big leading guys. But they've got a really nice complement of players that they really need to take advantage of. Realistically, you would think the Knicks are the only team that are ahead of them in the East. That's pretty much the only way I can put it, is that the New York Knicks would be the only team that's ahead of Cleveland in the East. So to me, if you are no less than a top 2 team in your respective conference, really simple, you're going to go to the conference finals. Or that should be at least your end goal, to go to the conference finals. Now, I don't really have any great age issues now. If I look all the way across their board, they have only 1 player who is over the age of 30 as it stands, and that's Larry Nance, who's got 10 years veteran experience. That's going to be key for some of the younger guys or guys that might get offside. But ultimately, to look at Cleveland, they're one of the 2 best teams in the East. They've been consistently a top 3 team in the East for the better part of 4 years now. They need to be able to take another big step. They could look at the NBA Finals. The Detroit Pistons, a playoff team last year, and a team that I think can really look to solidify themselves as a genuine playoff hope again in 25-26. Again, certainly think that they are going to have to utilise that growth and utilise that new experience that they've got. They're going to be led by one of the best young guards in the league. For me, one of the best players in the league last year. I had no issues in suggesting that Cade Cunningham should have been on the All-NBA first team. That's the level he had. People were not really saying much, but I guarantee you if Detroit get close to 50 wins this year, we're going to hear a lot more conversation about Cade Cunningham. Last year was the equivalent of if Anthony Edwards really stepped up in the absence of Karl-Anthony Towns. And then the following year, everyone blew their minds because they couldn't believe just how good Anthony Edwards played. Cade Cunningham may be very well in for something like that this coming season. For Detroit, they're not looking too bad at all. Pretty consistent where they need to be. Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Caris LeVert, Javonte Green, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey is still there. Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart is still there. Duncan Robinson comes into the fold as well. Marcus Sasser can be a handy rotation player as well. Of course, there are some different conversations at the moment around who will and won't take an extension. My understanding is Jalen Duran and Jaden Ivey both aren't feeling it at the moment, or certainly haven't been able to come to agreement. But for Detroit, they're players that you kind of want to get locked up when you can and just try and build something a little consistent. Osar Thompson, clearly a great defender. Good to keep him in the team. Talked about Cade Cunningham and the level he was at last year. Duncan Robinson, he's a guy that, he hasn't had the greatest couple of years, but maybe a scene changer, maybe just being able to be that shooter, that reliable spot-up shooter is all you need. Certainly couldn't get away with that in Miami the way it has been, but I don't think there's really a bad decision there for Duncan Robinson as far as a shot selection in this team. Again, they were one of the biggest they were the biggest turnaround last year. They went from essentially winning 18 games to 44 games. As far as their season turnaround, it might have even been greater than that. I can't recall straight off the top of my head. But that's the sort of fight and determination that this group's had. They've had a really good balance with some veteran leadership, and now that they've got a little bit of playoff experience and they know how to play together and what it takes to achieve winning basketball and winning results, they need to apply that. For me, Cade Cunningham, I think he's got All-NBA written all over him once again. To what level, I'm not sure. It's going to take a little bit of work when you look at the guard options for the first team. But if he's going to be an All-NBA level player once again, there's no reason for me Detroit don't make the playoffs. To the Indiana Pacers, the reigning Eastern Conference champions and the defeated, unfortunately, through 7 games in the NBA Finals. So a real valiant effort there by the Pacers, and they're going to need another valiant effort this year when you factor in how their team is going to look. Of course, I still think they're going to go to the playoffs because I think they've got enough experience, got enough role players and dedicated team individuals to get the job done. It's certainly going to be more of an uphill push, particularly when they don't have Tyrese Halliburton and particularly when they've just lost Miles Turner. So there's a lot of work to be done, but at the same time, they need to maintain who they are, the culture that they are, the character that they are in this time of need. Because if they're able to continue to play well, if they're able to establish themselves, if they're able to get wins on the board, it makes that transition back to a Tyrese Halliburton after his Achilles injury. That transfer becomes a lot easier. The team still remains selfless, and there's still that opportunity for a little bit of growth and development there. So factoring in Tyrese Halliburton still on the roster, they still have quite a number of quality players. Your Benedict Mathurin's, your Obi Toppins, your Andrew Nembhard, your TJ McConnells, James Wiseman now getting a run, Johnny Furphy getting a run, Isaiah Jackson, Aaron Neesmith, as we keep going through, Pascal Siakam also crucial with head coach Rick Carlisle. So you look at a team that's played in the NBA Finals, you look at guys that have made major playoff runs, guys who have been pretty good contributors to competing teams, then you're still seeing a lot of that consistency there for Indiana. Now, I can't sit here and write them off for one simple factor. People wrote them off last year, and then they finished off the second best record following New Year's and made it to the NBA Finals. Now, it's going to be a lot different with Tyrese Halliburton, so it's going to be, interesting to see who's going to have the ball handling duties and are we controlling the play for the team. But at the same time, plenty of upside there, plenty of fierce competitors, guys that can just get the job done. That's exactly what Indiana needs. For Pascal Siakam, he's going to need an All-NBA level season. For me, Siakam was an All-NBA level player last year. We're talking, a top 15 player in the league when he's on, he's contributing, and he's going to be able to show that once again. He started to show it in Toronto after Kawhi Leonard left. He was starting to show it a little bit with Indiana as Tyrese Halliburton's come along for the ride. He's got another chance to do it. And again, who is the next man up mentality here? It has to be someone like Pascal Siakam, but you do have to wonder whether this is the time for your Benedict Mathurins and for your Andrew Nembhards to really step up, to really step out and show what they're made of. Indiana, they're a playoff team. It's going to be interesting to see how they gel and how they mix. Over to the Miami Heat. Now, for me, the Heat have been floating around that play-in tournament area, that 6th, 7th, 8th seed for the last few years. I think now is the time that we're going to see them truly bottom out. and I think we're going to start to see them go through a bit of a phase where they really assess where their talent's at, what can they get for that talent, and what do they do from here on out. I've got them as a bottom 5 team, but I just feel they're going to be playing a little bit of the long game when it comes to this season. Now, as we have a look across their lineup, it's not that impressive. Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Hami Harkes, Nikola Jovic, Davian Mitchell, Norman Powell, Terry Rozier, Khalil Ware, and Andrew Wiggins. So don't get me wrong, they certainly do have some players that can compete. And if they're able to compete and get on the boards, I mean, that's going to be elite. That's going to be a good team to watch. I'd love to see someone like a Norman Powell fit in really well with an Adebayo, with a Tyler Hero. See someone like Andrew Wiggins be third, fourth complement. Terry Rozier hitting up where he needs to. Harkes hitting up where he needs to. Someone like Khalil Ware really taking the next step in his development. But I just don't see it happening. The one upside that they do have is that they have Eric Spoelstra as a coach. And if there's a guy that's going to be able to coach the best out of a lineup, it's going to be Eric Spoelstra. He's proven that time and time again. But I just think they're playing the long game. And the questions are they going to try and bottom out and try and attack the draft and try and get some capital built into these players for draft picks for, moving around later on? Or are they going to see a major signing again, meaning that they're going to have to do a little bit of work with these guys to develop them and make them trade package worthy? But there was some really serious conversation that it is alleged between Milwaukee and Miami. So are they going to try and really just build up a base of core players and picks that they can then send straight over to acquire the likes of a Giannis Antetokounmpo? Or are we talking about a team here that's just going to have to go the long way about it? You're going to have to grit and grind and bite their tongue and grit their teeth and see what happens. I'm not really sure specifically how they go about it or exactly what can happen, but it's going to be an interesting time there for Miami. You're going to see spurts of the old heat basketball, there's no doubt about it. But you're also going to see a lot of developmental basketball, guys that are trying to get into their groove, and potentially guys who just want to get out because that's not what they're there for. That is not why they've headed to South Beach. As I said, a couple of really competitive pieces there, and I think they've got some nice development. But for me, you're still talking about a bottom 5 team in the Eastern Conference. Over to the next point of call, and it was the point of call that Miami are probably going to try and look to make if he becomes available, and that is to the Milwaukee Bucks, who, despite everything, the inclusion of Miles Turner, nice and key, I still think are a playoff team, but I think this could be the last year we see Giannis in Milwaukee. Let's take a bit of a look across their lineup, which isn't as bad as I think people first thought, but I definitely don't think that we're looking at a team that's going to be doing too much outside of the first round. In saying that, they have one of the 3 best players on the planet who, on his night, can be the best two-way player in the league. You've got Jericho Sims, you've got Miles Turner, you've got Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis, Gary Harris, Taurine Prince, Amir Coffey, Kyle Kuzma, Giannis, and Karl-Anthony as another crucial pickup, coached by Doc Rivers. I mean, for me, that's the thing with the Bucks. They've got some guys there that if they want to step up and step out, they can certainly prove to be key. Miles Turner proven key on finals runs teams. Gary Trent Jr. proven a key rotation. Bobby Portis, a former champion. Kevin Porter Jr. providing he keeps his hands to himself. Gary Harris has proven. Taurine Prince can do a job here or there. Kyle Kuzma, proven rotation piece. Amir Coffey, proven rotation piece. Karl-Anthony really starting to get a bit of a spark, and we'll look to see some points out of him. And of course, Giannis, one of the 25 greatest players of all time. The question is, does he win the scoring title this year? He's had back-to-back 30 burgers on 60% for the last 2 years. And I realistically, it wouldn't shock me if Giannis decided to go 30, 12, and 8 this year. He had 30, 12, and 6 last year. It just wouldn't shock me if he went and did that this year. That's the kind of player that he is. Can he win the scoring title? Because that's going to be the ultimate test from an offensive side of the ball as to whether Giannis is going to be able to score efficiently. Because some of the other guys I mentioned, while they can score the ball, they can score it inefficiently. So he's going to need to carry a lot of the workload there. And the ultimate question then becomes, of the Milwaukee Bucks, is when does their rebuild start? Because Yeah, they've got some guys who are veterans and they've been around the league, but the second Giannis goes off that team, if you're Milwaukee, unless you're going to get an absolute bag for it, you've got to rebuild. And, I mean, he's been there 12 years. He's their second greatest player in franchise history. You know, you've got to pay respects to that there, but at the end of the day, there has to be something that goes on and goes down for the Bucks. We'll see what happens. I think Giannis can win the scoring title. I think the Bucks can win the playoffs, can make the playoffs, but it's a question if they move Giannis, how soon that rebuild starts. And from one suitor for Giannis Antetokounmpo to another, the New York Knicks, who, for me, have to be a conference finals team and probably have to be favourites in the East, which is a really big thing to say, but let's have a look at their list and exactly what they're going to be able to produce. Someone like a Jordan Clarkson, Miles McBride, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Mitchell Robinson, Mikal Bridges, Yabusel, Karl-Anthony Towns, Landry Shamet. I mean, that's most of what their lineup was last year, and they're able to run that as much as they want. Karl-Anthony Towns has entered into this team as its best player. Jalen Brunson also has a case as its best player. You've got someone like Mikal Bridges who's going to be there every night. Josh Hart who's going to play his role. Jordan Clarkson, who I would have a feeling is going to be a key offensive leader off the bench. OG Anunoby, as we've mentioned before. Like, we're talking about guys who can ball, who can play, who don't mind at times playing both sides of the ball and being a little more sacrificial. I mean, we talk about Karl-Anthony Towns a hell of a lot more with his performance at centre last year if it wasn't for Nikola Jokic. That's how well he played. It doesn't get talked about much, but I mean, he had a top 10 year last year, Karl-Anthony Towns. That's the level that he's played to in New York. Of course, they changed their coach. So Mike Brown's going to bring a brand new look to what this team is going to be able to do. But when you factor it all in, when you look at where they are, when you look at how the least is looking, horrible to say, but that's how it's looking, there's a genuine chance that the New York Knicks will make the NBA Finals. Now, is that Knicks team going to be deep enough and prepared enough to take on some of the juggernauts of the West? I don't know. But it's something that does have to be considered. It's something that has to be considered. The real question beyond that there is, though, the inquiries that were made around Giannis Antetokounmpo in the offseason that never eventuated. You know, we're talking about a team here that wants to obtain one of the 3 best players in the league, one of the 25 greatest players of all time, and a guy who has been pretty much the most efficient scorer from the floor in basketball for the last half decade, at least. The only other guy that comes close for me is a guy who's got MVPs. That's pretty much the only difference. So for the Knicks, I think they head to the conference finals. There has to be a question about them winning it all. And on top of that, are they in a position to potentially recruit another player? We'll see how it pans out. Over to the Orlando Magic. Now, it's not necessarily a team that you think of straight away, but I think Orlando, providing everything goes well, they're a top 4 team in the East. Like, they're genuinely one of the 4 best teams in the East, and they're going to have some of the best combinations on the floor offensively and defensively in the conference. And they could cause a major upset if you don't take them serious enough. Anthony Black, Jonathan Isaac, Tyus Jones, Desmond Bain, Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner, Tristan Da Silva, Wendell Carter Jr., and Gorga Batazzi. When you see the way that they can play basketball as a unit, you really need to consider exactly where they're going to be sitting. Okay, there have been some questions around some players who aren't necessarily on their front line. That's fair enough. I think every team has them. But when you want to look at exactly what Apollo Banchero started producing at the start of the year last year, and what he'd produced the year prior, when you look at what Franz Wagner produced early last year and what he's shown previously he can do, someone like a Desmond Bain as well, who's come over from Memphis, who's known to be a decent player, who can rotate through, who's been able to step up in the absence of other lead players. You know, that's a guy that can get it done. Batazzi, a known defender. Tristan Da Silva really stepped up last year as a rookie. Wendell Carter Jr. has been a solid big for a while now. Someone like an Anthony Black who provided good rotation minutes. Tyus Jones can provide rotation minutes. Jalen Suggs, capable bench scorer. Jonathan Isaac, one of the most underrated defenders from a per 36 minute basis that the league has ever seen. So the question now remains, what can Orlando do with it? I think they're a genuine chance if they can really pull an upset and get things in their favour, that it could roll on to a conference final. The ultimate question does become the doctor's certificate and the medical bills. What does the doctor's report say? Are we going to get 70 games out of Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero? They're going to be able to play 60 of those games together? Because if they are, Orlando are going to be a very different team. They haven't sacked their coach. Jamal Mosley's still leading the way. But now if he's able to really refine this roster and keep health about it, they're going to be really, really competitive. They're going to be fun to watch. As I said, outside of really 2 runs in the last 3 years, they have been a minimum 500 team. And I think they're going to be able to do that with some relative ease again this year. Orlando, they are one to watch in the Eastern Conference. And one to watch in the Eastern Conference for the simple fact of not knowing if they're going to be healthy, when they're going to be healthy, and how they're going to perform. It has to be the Philadelphia 76ers, and it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how this all pans out for them, because honestly, I don't see them being more than a bottom 5 team. And there isn't a team where health plays more of a factor in their fortunes than anywhere else in the league. Let's have a look at the roster. Tyrese Maxey, Andre Drummond, Quentin Grimes, Kyle Lowry, Paul George, Kelly Oubre Jr., Jared McCain, Joel Embiid, Eric Gordon, VJ Edgecombe, like Jabari Walker, another guy as well. These are the guys that are probably going to be the key of that team. But when you go along the line, Maxey got hurt last year. Lowry got hurt last year. Paul George has been hurt. Joel Embiid's nearly medically retired. Jared McCain's coming off a knee. Eric Gordon was injured. Like, if you can get that team healthy and get them on the floor, yeah, there's some older guys there and some genuine veterans. I don't think anyone questions that. But if you can get them healthy and get them on the floor, you've got a competitive team. Throw the bottom 5 out of the window. Everyone will agree with that. But based on the bill of health that the team has been given for the last 2 years and the inconsistencies in the lineup, the lack of care for guys that have taken the leadership and then had to hand it back and then haven't had form and then in turn have tried too hard and got injured, you just can't have a solid judgment on what this team's going to be. I mean, if you're going to look from a health standpoint, you'd say Tyrese Maxey is going to be the number 1 option this year, because you don't know about Joel Embiid, who over under 40 games. Over under, does he get medically retired? Because that was a genuine conversation for a guy who's played less than 50% of available games. And don't get me wrong, when he's been on, we're talking about an MVP, apparently. Guy who won a scoring title, a guy who's been right up there in all defensive voting, all that sort of stuff. Paul George, we all know what Paul George's prime looked like. Kyle Lowry, capable player. The list goes on. But if these guys aren't healthy and these guys aren't on the floor, or they're on the floor for the wrong reason, you just can't rate them. And that's the real tough thing right now. If you'd have said that this list was fully healthy last year, that other players had been healthy the year before, and they're able to inject and really start to grow and go, I'd have no issues in saying that Philadelphia is probably finally a conference final team. But they're not healthy enough to do that judgment. They're so inconsistent with their health, I don't know that they do more than miss the play-in tournament. Health is their factor. Embiid may not play 40 games. In that case, he probably gets retired. And Philadelphia are back to square one. Almost to the end of the Eastern Conference now. We'll move over to the Toronto Raptors, who I think are good enough to be a play-in team. It does come from a pretty decent front line of leaders, but I do think that they can be a play-in team. And not only a play-in team, but I think they're going to be the litmus test for the rest of the league. And I've had different teams do this before, but ultimately the litmus test for me in each conference, if you can beat these guys, there's a fair chance you're a playoff team. If you're thereabouts with those guys, you're a lower seed play-in. If you can't beat them, you're not making the playoffs. That's what I think you're going to see Toronto as this year. As we go through their particular squad to see what they've got, AJ Lawson, Grady Dick, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Garrett Temple, Jakob Poeltl, really leading the way there as well. And a couple of other guys floating through. They are still coached by Darko Rajakovic, who's proven to be a coach that will step up for his players. So there is a lot of top heavy there, but there's a lot of top talent at the very top there. So again, I'm really keen to see, though, from a triple threat standpoint, how Barnes, Barrett and Ingram work as their lead three, because that's exactly what they're going to be. Someone like an Emmanuel Quickly will chip in, and a Jakob Poeltl would think would be their 5-man, and that would be their starting lineup, which really isn't too bad of a starting lineup when you stack all of them up in the Eastern Conference. And again, it's the least in conference in comparison this year. We're probably going to see as many different results. We're going to see more results and certainly more variables, which lead more credence to potentially a more successful Raptors season. But I really want to see exactly how that's going to pan out as far as that three-headed monster for the Raptors. And ultimately, it is a new era of Raptors basketball. When RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes have been together, they've shown some real good glimpses. But someone like a Brandon Ingram coming into this team really turns over a leaf, essentially fully closes out what was that lineup from 2019. They've fully turned the corner now from what was that championship team essentially 7 seasons ago. It's going to be a matter of how they gel. We talk about this all the time. Scotty Barnes, one of the leading forwards in the league. Brandon Ingram, one of the leading forwards in the league. RJ Barrett, a proven big shot maker. Emmanuel Quickly, a valuable guard. So they have some really nice stuff there. They've committed to Poeltl, so they know that he's wanting to perform. It's a matter of them putting that all together and trying to get a result. As I said, I think they're a playing team, and I think they're going to be the litmus test for the rest of the league, let alone the conference. And finally, in the Eastern Conference, we start with the Washington Wizards. So, we end with the Washington Wizards, and that's essentially what it'll be, the bottom 5 of the Eastern Conference. And looking at everything we've gone through, you've got a very good case that they are going to be the worst team in the East. Now, they certainly do have some players who can play. They certainly have some veterans who are experienced enough to try and have a bit of an impact, but there's nothing here that makes me really want to jump up and shout and get ultimately excited for what I think this team can be. But we'll go through the roster here. Bilal Coulibaly, Cam Whitmore, CJ McCollum, AJ Johnson, Bub Carrington, Champagny, Trey Johnson is a rookie in this one here, Anthony Gill, Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, Chris Middleton, and Marvin Bagley the third, the real standouts in this one, coached by Brian Keefe. Yeah, I just think when you look at how that roster is constructed, you've got a lot of guys who have played rookie season or 1 or 2 years of experience, to veterans that are very limited in their experience. Okay, you're looking at Chris Middleton, second option on a championship team. CJ McCollum, he's been in the league over a dozen years, president of the Players Association, really switched on guard, brings that culture to the team, which is what they really need right now. Of course, Alex Sarr on that team as well, as I mentioned, a guy who was standing out. Bilal Coulibaly really tried to stand up as well. So have these guys that are transitioning through, but ultimately I just don't think they're going to have enough that's going on. There's too big of a mix of young guys and old guys as far as the age gap and the bridge is concerned. There's a real question about who's going to be their leader. You would assume that obviously it's going to be CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton, but you've got to look at what guys like Coulibaly, guys like Whitmore, and guys like Alex Sarr are doing. It's just a matter of what sort of development you get out of them, because that young core is that next bit of Washington. Because you look at the history of Washington itself as a team, and it's very much not decorated. It's very much limited. Okay, it's had some pieces here or there, but they've been conference final. They've been conference playoff fillers. And the last thing Washington want to do is develop a bunch of conference playoff fillers or play-in fillers. Like, just, you're either there to compete and try and be the best you can, or you can't. And that's the situation that Washington find themselves in right now. Again, I think they're a bottom 5 team. There's too big of a bridge between the veterans and the youth. We don't know who their next leader is, and we don't know what's what's in store for their young core. Over to the Western Conference now, and there are plenty of options and some more, let's just say, upside to the teams that we're about to start going through here in the West. We'll start with Dallas head coach Jason Kidd, and I think you're looking at a top 4 seed over in the West. Plenty of nice rotations here and guys that have contributed all over the place. They're probably a lot deeper than people expected, and providing they can stay healthy, they can really do a bit. Still a couple of questions though on what can happen. So you look at someone like a Dante Exum, you look at Max Christie, Derek Lively, Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Dwight Powell, Brandon Williams, Kyrie Irving, Najee Marshall, Caleb Martin, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, Klay Thompson, of course, the rookie himself, Cooper Flagg. That is a really deep team. That is a capable team. The only questions that, for me, are going to surround Dallas revolve around their lead veterans. First one, of course, being Anthony Davis. When Anthony Davis is on, Anthony Davis has a case as the best player in the league. When Anthony Davis was on as arguably the best player in the league, he was the best player on a championship team. The only issue is that was 5 years ago, and there's been consistent health issues since. Now, they're saying he's put a little bit of weight on. Whether that comes down now to a commitment issue following the trade that he received last year, I don't know. But a little bit of size for AD doesn't necessarily help. Yeah, I know he's frail, but if they're going to make him play a little bit more inside than they do outside, he needs to be able to take that bruising. I think that size will help. Ultimately, though, is this the last prime year we're going to see of AD? Are we going to see 25 and 12 and 2.5 blocks? Because if we're going to get that, then Dallas become a bit of a different team. The question is this the last time we see it? And ultimately, we know Kyrie Irving's such a game changer. When does he manage to get back into this team? Is out with a knee injury, has plenty of experience, has shown time and time again his ability to bounce back and have an impact. He's the big key piece here. Yeah, you've got Klay Thompson and Cooper Flagg. Okay, a young guy, a really solid veteran. D'Angelo Russell, who's still, a solid veteran and contributed elsewhere. But Kyrie is the guy that they're going to have to hang their hat on if they want to have some real serious attention on their team, if they want to have a real serious dip at potentially winning the championship. Don't know exactly how it's going to unfold. I don't know how soon he gets back and where he sits in the pecking order, but you would have to suggest that Dallas with Kyrie is a far better Dallas without Kyrie. We'll see exactly how it pans out. But again, Dallas, I think they're a top 4 team, and I think they're deeper than a lot of people expected. Moving on over to the next competitor, and likely the man and the reason that Anthony Davis had to put on the weight that he did. It's the Denver Nuggets, and of course Nikola Jokic, who I think Denver are probably conference final bound once again. To me, have to be one of the 2 favourites there, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that they need to make the most of the Joker and certainly make the most of the pieces around him. You look at Christian Braun, you look at Peyton Watson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown, Jonas Valanciunas, Cam Johnson, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon. They have to really try and make something out of whatever they can here for the Joker, who himself is probably on the verge, you would think, of one more MVP award. Now, I get that what I just read out certainly isn't as impressive as what other teams have. I don't know anyone who's going to defend that. But there isn't anyone in basketball like Nikola Jokic. And I think if you're going to throw these extra pieces around him and try and move some weight around, you're probably looking at a 4th MVP for Jokic. And sadly, I think a final MVP because of, as we know, how the media tends to vote for everything with these awards. It's a sad reality. I mean, here's a guy that should have won the last 5. I just don't know anyone that's joked around it. I mean, you could really make a case that he should have won it last year. I personally had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I don't think there's any real debate that if you'd have given him every possible MVP that Jokic has been available to win, there wouldn't be a debate and history wouldn't look at it wrong. I mean, we're realistically looking at one of the 15 greatest players of all time. That's the level that we're looking at. And for Denver, they really need to manage that, and they need to be able to utilize those new pieces, because Jokic needs guys who can score, who can consistently get a bucket, and guys who can stay healthy. There's a reason Michael Porter Jr. is not on the team anymore. Someone like a Bruce Brown knows how to play next to him. Someone like Cam Johnson will fit right in that Aaron Gordon-esque mold if he can really work it. Jamal Murray can obviously fit on the team. And I think someone like a Valanciunas is a guy who can step in and play that role for Jokic when he's not there. So again, they need to be able to utilize that rotation when it's there. Tim Hardaway Jr., we know he can score. Peyton Watson can score. Christian Braun can score. There does become a bit of a defensive question, but I think there's enough pieces around Jokic right now to make that conference finals run. I think he can get an MVP, but it would be the last MVP. We'll see exactly what Denver can do, but they should be looking at a top 4 spot in that Western Conference. Moving on over to another playoff contender, and that is, the oldest team in the league, and what will be essentially one of the oldest teams of all time when they take the floor, and that is the Golden State Warriors. I think they will be a playoff team. They have that capability and that experience, but many people are going to have to ask the question, is Father Time himself going to be suiting up for this squad? As we look across their lineup, Gary Payton Jr., Jonathan Kuminga, that's a question in itself. Brandon Przemski, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, Jimmy Butler, Al Horford, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Jackson Davis, if he manages to get a look in there, of course, coached by Steve Kerr. You have to ask at one point, though, how old is too old? I mean, let's just have a look at some of the names there that I've mentioned. Steph Curry, 37. Draymond Green, 35. Al Horford, 39. Jimmy Butler, 36. Buddy Hield, 32. That's a lot of, Gary Payton Jr.'s 32. That's a lot of age that's going to be running through your team and playing big minutes. Now, it's a fast-paced league. This is a team that set up the fast-paced league, but they need to get healthy. They need to stay healthy within that age as well. Now, plenty of people understand that Golden State were making some pretty good moves last year. Jimmy Butler coming to the team, himself and Steph started, complementing one another. You've got some really nice fits there. Draymond Green was able to do his usual thing. Someone like an Al Horford's going to be really complimentary to this team. Buddy Hield's going to be able to free up a little bit more. Jonathan Kuminga's going to want to play more of a role, so your chemistry questions come into it as well. And Przemski has proven to be a nice rotation there. But at some point, there has to be a youth factor, and there has to be a next generation, which is why my question of where are the next era of leaders with this team? Because at some point, if they all just age out and they just bottom out and they don't have anyone who's stepped up and taken a role, then you need to start asking questions. I know, and people are going to say it, you've got to utilise Steph Curry's prime, and you yourself have said you've got to utilise Steph Curry's prime. I 100% agree, but I wouldn't say Steph Curry's in his prime anymore. Steph Curry's starting to reach that stage where he's going to give you, 23 to 25 a game, but it's going to be consistently 23 and 5. You're not going to see those bursts of 35, 40 points, lights out. At some point, Father Time catches everybody. And while there are some people it's perceived it hasn't done, I can assure you that it has. Steph Curry's certainly going to be one of those people. It's a matter of how the Warriors manage this roster, because they are old. Father Time may as well suit up himself, and we need to know who the next era of leaders are for this Warriors squad. One of the most talked about teams in the postseason, and for good reason, because they've taken one gigantic step as to what they're going to be able to do this season. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how the Houston Rockets fare, particularly with the signing of Kevin Durant, and what will be starting the longest lineup in NBA history, with 4 out of 5 players 6'11" or taller. The shortest player in the starting lineup being 6'7". We're going to have a look across their roster at what they've got, and then we'll try and break it down a little bit more. Dorian Finney-Smith is one player there, of course. They're going to be without Fred VanVleet, who himself has been injured for the remainder of the year with an ACL. Kevin Durant, the big recruit, as talked about previously. Jayshawn Tate managed to maintain his position in the team. Of course, you know that Tari Eason is still there. You know that Steven Adams has joined the team. Jabari Smith still a factor as well. Armin Thompson is still there as well. Reed Shepherd, the rookie that wasn't quite able to get anything moving last year, you would think that he's going to start having a bit of a say in this one as well. Just a really, really deep team as to what exactly is going to happen here. No one is sure. And of course, who can forget Alperon Şengün, one of the leaders of this team. That is going to be quite a deep roster, quite a lengthy roster, as we've already discussed. Clint Capella coming back into the fold as well, and Jeff Green really senior. So an extremely deep team going all the way through here for the Rockets. It's going to be really interesting how they all pan out. Honestly, though, it's going to be around what will happen. Can Kevin Durant turn back time, and can they keep up with small ball? We've talked about the size of their lineup. The small ball is going to be the real issue for them. But providing a bit of length, providing a bit of defense, and they have capable shooters, this could be a really, really dangerous team. It's a reason I think they're at least a conference semi-finalist, potentially a conference finalist. And it's ultimately going to come down as well as to, can Kevin Durant turn back time? Kevin Durant is still a really high-octane scorer, but you need Kevin Durant to be fit, you need him to be healthy, and you need him on the floor. Phoenix looked like a really, really good team when he was there last year, but he just couldn't get on the floor. Your best ability is availability, and this Houston team is going to love it if Kevin Durant can stay on the floor. As I said, I've capped them at the moment as a conference semi-finalist. I would not be shocked to see them in the conference finals, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them competing for the Larry O'Brien Trophy at the end of the year. We then move to Los Angeles, and we start with the Clippers, because C comes before L, despite the fact you couldn't spell either of them without an L last year. I think they're a playoff team, and they've actually shaped up as a team that would have been. When you go through this roster, you can only imagine what this team would have looked like if everyone was playing at their absolute peak. They've got some depth, but much like the Golden State Warriors, they have some age issues as well. Bradley Beal, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, Derrick Jones Jr., Bogdan Bogdanovic, Brook Lopez, John Collins, Nick Batum, Ivica Zubac. That is a hell of a rotation, keeping in mind that, the age of these guys is really going to be the question as to whether it's going to be work, whether it is going to work, and whether it's worth it. Bradley Beal is 32, James Harden is 36, Kawhi Leonard is 34, Chris Paul is 40, Bogdanovic is 33, Lopez is 37. Nick Batum is 36. That's a lot of your rotation that are well north of 30, with a lot of miles and a lot of injuries on the board. So with their age and with their health, can this work? For me, it screams first round exit. And it's purely going to come down to injuries. It's going to come down to health. If they're not injured, if they're healthy, they've got the experience and the chemistry fits in, again, we're looking at a completely different team. But when you factor it all in, some guys lack a performance in the big dance. You have to really ask, does it work? And ultimately, you've got to look at the spread of youth. I mean, when I look at some of the other key rotations, guys under 30 are Derrick Jones Jr., Kendrick Dunn, by the way, 31. Derrick Jones Jr. is 28. John Collins is 28. Ivica Zubac is 28. So they're right in that wheelhouse as far as where they need to perform from that standpoint, but they're only a couple of ticks of the clock forward before they're 30 as well. It's a very different ball game when you're on an old team playing in a really fast young league. It's why there might be some teams that you look at and go, geez, he rates them. Well, this is part of the question. There's chemistry, there's age, there's health. Big things in a senior team. There are guys there that don't have a championship, guys that have been as good a playoff performance as the league has ever seen. It's going to be a real mixed bag for the Clippers. I think they're a playoff team. Imagine what this team would have looked like if everyone was in their prime. There isn't a salary cap big enough. Clippers are going to be another interesting season. Over to the Lakers, one of the more talked about franchises, and the way that they have handled everything in the off-season as well. They've got plenty of stars. They've got plenty of talent. It's a matter of whether they all connect. It's a matter of whether they're all going to fit in. We'll see exactly how this pans out. I think they're going to be a playoff team. And Luka is unquestionably the man on this team. But there's only one problem with being the man on this team, and that is that this show has absolutely nothing to do with its number one main character, and you'll see why in a second. DeAndre Ayton, Luka Doncic, Rui Hachimura, Jackson Hayes, LeBron James, Maxi Kleber, Dalton Connect, Jake LaRavia, Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart, Vanderbilt, Vincent. There is some depth on this team. There's some capability on this team. There are some good senior leaders, some good players on this team. But it makes an absolute point when the one question here is this year going to be about the Lakers and their championship hopes and Luka Doncic and the next era of Los Angeles basketball? Or is it going to be about LeBron James eventually retiring? We have reached that point. And don't get me wrong, LeBron's still one of the best players on this team. Was their best player last year. But if the Lakers are serious, they've got to hand this baton over to Luka. And they've got to be really clear with it. They've made that from a financial commitment. They've made that. Austin Reeves as well, as I mentioned before. Like, there's a lot of potential talent on this team if they can gel. It's a matter of them gelling. Because they're names, but is there chemistry? And that's what it's going to come down to. The other side of it for Luka, can he win the MVP? Because the last time someone probably could have won an MVP playing next to LeBron James, they didn't. And I can't imagine that would be a narrative that anyone would want on their resume with the capability of a LeBron James. Particularly if he's in that conversation with Russell and with Jordan. Guys who were the man, were always the man, and were never questioned as a man. So we'll see. I think the Lakers can certainly be competitive, but it's going to be around, is LeBron James going to call it quits? Is this league going to have enough is this team going to have enough chemistry? And are they going to let Luka be the man and the main character of this show? Because history says he's not. But I think the Lakers are a playoff team. It's a matter of what they can do from a chemistry standpoint. To our next team, and a team that I think will fall a little bit down, but there might be one or two things that could particularly save this team, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies. I originally thought they might have been a play-off team, but instead I think they're going to be a play-in team. But the thing that will save them the most is that a playoff run may save a rebuild. Let's have a look at their team. We're going to have Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr., Ty Jerome, KCP, Santi Aldama, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant, Zach Edey, Brandon Clark, Jock Landale, and GG Jackson. That is where this team is landing at the moment. And it's going to be really interesting because you look at the contracts that have been put out for their players and their leaders, particularly when you look at the money that was thrown at Jaren Jackson Jr. in the off-season. The man signed a $240 million contract and the next day was out with turf toe. Not a good look for a guy who is one of the most ambidextrous players in the league, an elite two-way player, a guy who's a former defensive player of the year, and now he's out and he's on big money. That is not a look that you want nor need if you are Memphis. But I actually don't think that he's the issue. I ultimately think the issue is going to be Ja Morant and whether they pick that up and whether he cleans up. And if he doesn't clean up, do they trade him out? If they trade him out, what do they get for him? And is anyone going to want to take him? Because if no one wants to take him, they're stuck with him. And that becomes a whole other issue in itself. And everyone knows when Ja Morant is locked in, he's one of the best players in the league. He's one of the best athletes that's played in the last 25 years. No one questions that. What they question is his character and his culture and what he brings to this team and how that impacts the winning ways of what this team can be. Injuries aside, because there are quite a number of injuries leading into what is going to be the opening night and the opening week of the season, you have to factor that in. The other thing you have to factor in is big guys with lower leg injuries, small, minor or otherwise, generally aren't always the same player. Turf toe is not the injury you want as a center, and granted Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't the same size as a lot of other centers. It's not an injury that he needs. So if he can return, if he can compete, if Memphis can stay solid, they seem to always be able to stay solid somehow, and can get towards a playing seed, okay, things might be a little different. If they can get towards the playoffs more, consistently, that'll be better for them as well. That'll save a rebuild and everything will be fine. But it's those two crucial factors on how Jaren Jackson Jr. returns and how Ja Morant's able to perform on and off the court that will ultimately decide exactly what this Memphis team looks like next year. The Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that has gone from being in my mind, a semi-final level team to, and I think they still can make the semi-finals, but I don't see them as more than a general playoff team. Now, if we look at their team, they still have some capable players, there's no doubt about it. They have some guys that are willing to step up and have a go, but I just think there's going to be a fair bit taken off of that team, particularly with someone like a Nickeil Alexander-Walker leaving the team, but we'll get to that in a second. Dante DiVincenzo, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Bones Highland, Mike Conley, Naz Reid, someone like a Jalen Clark has proven to play, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle. They're going to be the key rotations throughout your team. Now, when you really want to look at that, this is where Anthony Edwards needs to make that quantum leap that people have been waiting for him to take. This is the season to do it. And he's taken steps. People haven't liked that, there was the comparisons all of a sudden to Michael Jordan. They expected him to average 35 a game and it wasn't going to happen. But he's really refined his game with his jump shooting. He's able to still get inside. He's still a freak athlete. And now that he's got such a dynamic offensive arsenal in a league that allows him to have such a dynamic offensive arsenal, he could really try and step this up once again this year, and he's got a lot more freedom to do it. And the other question, they have there is if they can utilise that and utilise their depth and their chemistry, are they a semi-final team? They've proven to be that level of team over the last two seasons, conference finals and the semi-final. But that's also going to come down to their depth. Now, Dante DiVincenzo, yes. McDaniels, yes. Edwards, yes. Bones Highland, yeah, he just needs more exposure at this level. Mike Conley still going around, he's fairly old. Naz Reid, proven rotational player. Jalen Clark, proven player. Rudy Gobert, getting older but proven defender. Julius Randle, getting older, proven player. So, they're not the oldest team in the league from a veteran standpoint. They have a bit of seniority, but they have a bit of mix from top to bottom of their youth. So that's where you have to argue that their depth is still certainly there. It's just a matter of how peak and how high and how consistent that depth can be. For me, I think you can lock them in as a playoff team. Can't lock them in as a semi-finals team. But again, if Anthony Edwards decides to explode, we're having a different conversation. They're a different team. They're in a different stratosphere. We'll see whether it happens. To New Orleans, and I don't think we're going to see much of a change here. I think you're still looking at a bottom 5 team. The positive that you've got right now, though, is that Zion Williamson is showing that he is fit and ready to compete, but he's not really doing it next to no one. And you'll see what I mean as far as that level of talent, that potential All-NBA level of talent on the Pelicans. So along with Zion Williamson, you have Herbert Jones, you have Jordan Poole. You do have Dejounte Murray, but again, he's out with an Achilles injury. That would change the look of this team. But he's out with an Achilles injury. There's a fair chance we're not going to see much out of him. Jose Alvarado, Yves Missy. You then go on to Trey Alexander, who got some minutes. Trey Murphy, who can play. Sadiq Bey and Kevon Looney. Coached by Willie Green. So again, Zion's fit. But everyone that he ever had around him that could compete and play isn't there. If you had Brandon Ingram there fit and healthy, if you had CJ McCollum there fit and healthy, you were somehow able to get someone like Dejounte Murray that would be fit and healthy, I'll give you Herb Jones and I'll give you Murphy. Those guys can play, and they're good defenders, and they're key rotational players. But Zion's next best player at the moment this season is going to be Jordan Poole. And unless they're willing to let Herbert Jones and Trey Murphy take on more of the scoring, that's how this team's going to look. Now, if Zion's fit and he's willing to, 25, 26 a game, 25, 7 and 7, he's going to shoot 60% from the floor. He's going to be a freak. He's going to be a presence. Yeah, you might be looking at a slightly better team, but we haven't seen enough. Zion and LaMelo Ball, I talked about it earlier in the video. They sit in the same class for me in the way that they go about it, in the hype that they haven't yet to deliver, all of that sort of stuff. That is where they sit right now. Just factually, that is where they sit right now. So, what they can do, I don't know, because, again, Zion's fit, but you need someone to keep up with him. And then if he's not fit, you've then got to change the dynamic of your team once again. And if you look at how that team's made up, they don't really have any effective pieces. They're going to be able to trade and bring in a big name because they're going to New Orleans, and they're probably going to be trading based on the fact that Zion's not fit. Now, if you're trading on the basis that Zion is fit and committed, that's fine. But you're probably still 2 seasons away from that actually being an effective strategy because he hasn't shown it yet. And on top of that, teams aren't going to want to take him away to try and trade in a big piece. So for me, New Orleans, they still sit as a bottom 5 team. Zion is fit, but he's next to nobody. Can he stay fit, and can someone keep up with him? All questions that very much need to be answered. And from a team that needs to have pretty much every question answered around their team to, well, one of the best teams in basketball in the 21st century, and a team that is genuinely set potentially to repeat in a very, very, very big way. The Oklahoma City Thunder, led by the reigning MVP and Finals MVP and scoring champion, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, complemented, of course, by Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Cho, Aaron Wiggins, Kason Wallace, Kenrick Williams, and Hartenstein. We're talking about a team that won 68 games and won an NBA Finals series within the last 6 months. I don't have any questions around this team. I have some projections around this team, but I don't have any questions around this team. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't make another NBA Finals, but I'm certainly not going to be bowled over if someone says, hey, Oklahoma City won the championship again. That's how good a team they are. And 68 wins last year, they could have won 70. I would expect them to be at least a 65 win team again this year. Everything prevailing and health being on their side, of course. For me, if you're Shai Gilgeous, if you're looking as an OKC fan, you're looking to see if Shai can do the double. Can he win back-to-back league and finals MVPs? He would be one of 3 players to ever do it. The other 2, LeBron James and a guy who wore 23 for the Bulls. That's it. They're the only guys to ever do it. LeBron did it at his absolute zenith. Jordan did it at his absolute zenith. If Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does it, you'd have to suggest we're probably looking at Shai at his zenith on a very, very deep team. And the other question around this is the health of Chet Holmgren. And if he's fit, is he one of the All-NBA centers? I mean, he's listed 7'1". Chet Holmgren is bigger than 7'1". No one's debating that question there. With his capabilities defensively, his ability to stretch the floor offensively, if he can somehow get on the glass a little bit more, maybe facilitate a little bit, there's no reason to believe that he's not an All-NBA level center. Now, if you had the MVP alongside a two-way center with the abilities there of Chet Holmgren, with all your defensive pieces and capable scorers and guys that can step up in a Jalen Williams, in a Lou Dort, in Alex Caruso, you name them, they've got them. Why can't they repeat? It's really simple. The Oklahoma City Thunder are one of the 2 best teams in the West. I wouldn't be shocked to see them holding up that Larry O'Brien at the end of the year. Moving over to Phoenix now, and the Suns have gone through certainly a reshaping since last year, where Bradley Beal is now no longer there. Kevin Durant is no longer there. There are no trade pieces, but there is one constant, and that's the greatest scorer in franchise history in Devin Booker. I think the Suns are going to fall down to that bottom 5. I don't know anyone who's really going to question that. They do have a couple of pieces here or there, but in saying that, they are just a couple of pieces here or there. As we go through, it's Royce O'Neal, it's Devin Booker, it's Dylan Brooks, it's Jalen Green, it's Grayson Allen, it's Mark Williams, and that's pretty much where any excitement for the Phoenix Suns and the depth of their roster sits. Devin Booker's going to have another huge year. There's no doubt about it. Devin Booker is one of the at one point there had that case as the best shooting guard in the league. I think Devin Booker still has a case as one of the 3 best shooting guards in the league. directly off the top of my head, if I was going to name two better shooting guards, immediately comes to mind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards. But Devin Booker, for me, certainly has that capability of being that number 3 guy. Right now he's trying to fight someone like a Donovan Mitchell for it, which is a really, pushing crap uphill sort of argument when you look at what Mitchell's doing in Cleveland. So there's a little bit of work that needs to be done there. But he has obtained someone like a Jalen Green. Now, Green over the last couple of years has been able to establish himself as a key player in Houston before he was traded. Now, certainly not the number 1 man, although he did show tendencies of that at times. He managed to shrink in the smaller moments, and that's certainly something that Devin Booker doesn't need. He's already played next to a guard who, when he had a chance to win a championship, did that after they had a 2-0 lead, but no one wants to talk about Chris Paul in the 2022 finals. So the question is, can Jalen Green fit in? Because, the one thing that Devin Booker has that I've pointed out over the last couple of years, he has that ability to play more of a distribution style of play whilst getting points. And then the question becomes, what is next for the Phoenix Suns? Because Devin Booker's got 10 years under his belt. Does Devin Booker want to go somewhere else? I don't think so. He's just signed a really big contract with Phoenix, and good on him. He's clearly signalled his intent to want to stay around, a guy that can clearly play 2 positions, as far as a guard's concerned. But this is what they've built around him. From a 2021 NBA Finals run to a best league 2022 to now, this team has fallen by the wayside something chronic. I think they're a bottom 5 team. Devin Booker's probably due for a big year, but you do have to ask what's next for the Phoenix Suns. Moving on to the Portland Trail Blazers, and if you are looking for a more eclectic group of talent, you're probably not going to find it. If you want a deeper, more effective pool of talent, you're definitely going to find it, because Portland itself, well, it's got a couple of pieces here or there, but they are a team genuinely with no direction. And this is based on the following factors. Damian Lillard has returned, but he's out, as we know, for the entire year. You've still got Scoot Henderson. You've still got Matisse Thybulle. You've now got Drew Holiday. You've got Avija. You've got Jeremy Grant. You've got Young Hansen. You've got Shaden Sharp. You've got, Robert Williams III when he's on the floor. And Tamani Kamara, who has been able to chip in here or there. So, yeah, that's Portland. A team with genuinely no direction. If there's going to be an upside out of it, it's that we're going to see a much more freer Drew Holiday, who's probably going to see more possessions of the basketball, which might just see him potentially look towards an all-star selection. Anthony Simons was leading this team the last couple of years. He's not there anymore. So you're also going to see someone like a Shaden Sharp get a little bit more of the ball. Young Hansen is going to be able to take advantage as the rookie. He's going to be decent to see. But across the board, you're going to see some struggle street. If you had Matisse Thybulle fit and you had Robert Williams fit in this team, your defensive presence changes a lot. With Drew Holiday, you're a different team. You're a vastly different team. If they were healthy, if they were fit, and those guys are on the floor, it's a vastly different fit. They're a completely different side. We're having a different conversation. I'm not looking at a bottom 5 team here, but with the way they are at the moment, they're a team genuinely with no direction, and they need to try and find their identity. Now, how they do that, I don't know. Can you try and convince a lot of these younger guys that we need you to lock in defensively? Can you convince a lot of these younger guys to give up their points? Can you convince some of these veteran guys here that, hey, they are the next generation, so you need to give them the basketball and you need them to produce? I don't know. My gut feeling is that you can't. But we'll soon find out, because that's exactly what is going to need to happen if at any point there's going to be any sort of, identity to what this Portland team is. Avdia, that is there. I can't believe I butchered his name so bad. Denny Avdia. If they can get a little bit more going here in Portland to get a bit of an identity, and I think on the defensive end that maybe there'll be some more respect. And Portland were close to 35 wins last year. I don't know whether they go close to it this year, because again, they are a team genuinely with no direction. Here is a team with a little bit of direction, but that direction generally is only going one way. Defensively, we could be looking at one of the most confusing teams we have seen in a long time, and that is the Sacramento Kings. Star-studded with no defence, unfortunately with a bit of age riding on their lead stars. I think we're going to be looking at a bottom 5 team. But again, they do have the capability offensively when they start firing to try and make something out of it. So let's have a look at their roster. Malik Monk, Russell Westbrook, Doug McDermott, Zach LaVine, Dario Saric, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, Dennis Schroeder, Drew Eubanks, Devin Carter, and that is pretty much where it starts to tail off. Doug Christie is the head coach, and he's got some decent talent around him. But ultimately, when I look at this team, there's just so much offense and so little defense. It's concerning. I mean, who's going to guard the basketball? You're potentially going to see a starting lineup at any one point of Dennis Schroeder, Russell Westbrook, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. Now, they do have some nice complementary pieces in there, don't get me wrong. I like Malik Monk. I like Dario Saric. I like Keegan Murray. Eubanks can compete. Doug McDermott can pinch hit for some shooting still. Devin Carter, played well last year. There's some nice pieces there. But again, it's going to have to gel really, really well. And this team's identity is going to be really interesting. Doug Christie is the coach. Defense is what you think of when you think of Doug Christie. And that's a very offensive team. So if they're able to lock in a little bit defensively and produce something offensively, they're still going to have to play through Sabonis. He's clearly the best player. But I don't know. There's something about this team that just makes me wonder about who is actually going to get a stop on the ball. They might surprise me. I'll happily be surprised. I think if they could really blend what is bound to be an extremely high offense with a quality defense, again, this bottom 5 conversation changes, but I don't see anyone guarding the basketball. And I think the other question out of this here, everyone's talking about is his final season. They don't know. But you'd have to say with the way Russell Westbrook was treated in the offseason, this is very much potentially his final chance. We're talking about 9-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Star, League MVP. This is his last chance. We'll see exactly what can come of it. Again, Sacramento, star-studded team. They don't seem to have any defense, despite the fact they're going to have a very defensive-minded coach. Real oddball sort of situation. Still think they're going to be bottom 5. Down to our final 2 teams. And this next one here might shock a few people. But I have the San Antonio Spurs, everything being equal, as a playing team. And it all comes down to an alleged 7-7 monster that is on screen right now. Because if healthy, Victor Wembanyama will be an All-NBA center this year. There isn't a question about it. Let's look at their roster. Victor Wembanyama, Dylan Harper, Keldon Johnson, De'Aaron Fox, Stephen Castle, Luke Cornett, Kelly Olynyk, Jeremy Sohan, Bismarck Biyombo, Devin Vassell, Julian Champagny, Harrison Barnes, all under head coach Mitch Johnson for the first time in a literal generation. Wemby is that good that he himself could get them to the play-in tournament. He himself was going to get them to the play-in tournament last year. And based on what we've seen, there's no question that a healthy Wemby is the defensive player of the year. In fact, he's that good that you may as well just pencil him in for the next decade, minimum. But if healthy, he's going to go to the All-NBA team. And it gets to the point where you have to look in the off-season where Hakeem Olajuwon came out and explained all the training that he'd done with Victor Wembanyama wasn't around being a centre. It was around being a big guard. A big guard, 6'7", not 7'7", which is the reliable height that they're giving him now. They've got him listed still at 7'4", and they're saying that he's grown. Like, what is the league going to do if this guy decides to fire up? Like, 25 and 12 and 4 blocks is a given, along with 1.5 steals. And you can't stop him. And he can shoot. The ultimate question is going to be around Mitch, their coach, Mitch Johnson. Again, pretty big shoes to fill. Wouldn't particularly like to be filling them when the most constant player in your franchise, on or off the court, even ahead of Tim Duncan, has managed to leave the fold. It's something you really have to consider. But in saying that, it's a lot of young guys who are going to be pretty open to some pretty young and moving concepts. And they've got a bit of talent. Are they one piece shy? I don't know. But I think everything being equal with Victor Wembanyama, we're looking at a playing team right here. And our final team in our review, our preview, I should say, for the 25-26 NBA season, the Utah Jazz. The team, as I've said here, is the worst team in the West. And let's have a look why. We'll go through key players. Kyle Anderson, Keontae George, Shvi Mahalik, Ace Bailey, Kyle Filipowski, Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Jusuf Nurkic, George Niang, and Kevin Love, coached by Will Hardy. I think they're the worst team in the West. There's literally not much more. I think they're the worst team in the West. I would be happy for them to prove me wrong, but I think they're the worst team in the West. Lauri Markkanen might be an all-star, but at the end of the day, I look at this roster and I have no clue what their end goal is. Walker Kessler has been one of the most efficient defensive players in the league for the last 4 or 5 years. Lauri Markkanen showed he can be an all-star. Kevin Love is still, a decent outlet passer, and Nurkic can get on the boards. That is it. That is it. They're bound to be a bottom 5 team in the West. I think they're bound to be the worst team in the West. The only positive would be if Lauri Markkanen made an all-star team, and I have no clue what this team is trying to achieve at all. Not the slightest. Much like last year, I think this year there's going to be some very, very brief comments on Utah every week. Much like this video here, because I've got nothing else to say. And that is my preview for the 25-26 NBA season. Let me know what you think. Who do you have sitting genuinely in a playoff spot? Who do you have competing in the play-in? Who are your worst 5 rosters? Who's winning your major awards? Who's got upside? Who doesn't? Things like trades, award winners, all that sort of stuff. Let me know. That has been my preview for the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.